Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Shop Stool podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. This is episode number 11. My name is Robin Lewis from robinlewismakes.com. I'm joined by Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks.
Hello.
And Jordan Crawford from Periodic Furniture Studio.
Hello.
We live stream the recording on YouTube every Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, or UTC plus 10, or you can watch or listen to it later on YouTube, iTunes, or SoundCloud. I want to say hello to everyone in the chat. We'll get to your comments and questions towards the end of the show, but feel free to chat amongst yourselves, the idea being that this is also a place for people to meet. So before we get into this week's episode, let's do a quick rundown of what everyone is working on. Joey?
Okay, what happened this week? Okay, I made my table. That's about... everyone see that yet?
Yeah, that was really good. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, that's a copy of a design.
That's a copy of a design. It's not even mine.
The original, man. Jesus.
I must say, credit to you, Joe, for mentioning the fact that you used his design and went to him and asked. Like most people would just go ahead and not care. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I guess so. I figured he's on Instagram. I'm on Instagram. He's going to see my pictures of it on Instagram. And to be honest, I just think the design is awesome. And as you might remember me talking about the dining table, what I was going to do, and it's completely different to what that is. And when I saw that, I was like, that's it. Forget my stupid drawings. Let's do this cool thing.
I have to admit, I did go and click on the link to his Instagram and find that table. And I wasn't expecting it to be exactly the same.
Yeah, right.
I was kind of expecting it to be very similar.
Yeah.
I was like, holy crap, that is the same table.
It's almost, I don't know. If you look at it, there's definitely differences, but the biggest difference in mine being the joint in the middle of the legs, I did a way simpler version.
Right.
But actually, I think I prefer my version more, but maybe that's just because I did it. But.
What was the name of that joint? I didn't really... It started with...
I just did a half lap. Yeah.
Oh, half lap. I heard a harbor joint.
Oh, right.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard of a harbor joint before.
I heard Harvard. I think you might have misspoke.
I probably just slurred my way through it like 11 p.m. Just like get the voiceover done.
I just thought it was a weird Kiwi term.
Yeah.
One question: as a beginner joiner, do dominoes just make everything easy? Because watching you just put the whole thing together with dominoes, I'm kind of thinking, well, what am I wasting my time with anything else for?
Yeah, I was thinking about this because somebody commented on the video, David, if you're watching, hi David, and he said something almost like that, thank God for the domino or something. And I was thinking afterwards, yes, in a word, I don't think I could have done that build the way I did it without the domino. I think
or
it could
in the time.
No, absolutely. The time was the biggest thing. This is a personal job, and I needed to get it done. But that was one point of view. Second, you could definitely do that by hand, but a lot more time. The joinery would probably be way stronger though as well. I actually came up with a cool way to do it. Some of the joinery, I came up with a really interesting way to do it, but I was like, stuff this, it's going to take me all day. I'm just going to throw a domino in this. And I said in the video too, I just relied on the epoxy doing what it was doing, because there's a lot of end-grain to end-grain joinery. And
the epoxy works for the end-grain.
The epoxy is doing that. The dominoes are doing some mechanical stopping of things breaking, but really the epoxy is...
That's interesting. Yeah, because I know, John, you've used dominoes quite often for your, like the table you did a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
Is that a fairly strong join?
Yeah, I mean, it's no different from the floating mortise and tenon. It's just you're limited on the sizes. So often if I'm doing a really big joint, not so much anymore that I have the slot mortiser, but if you're doing a big one, you can just kind of make the joint wider by moving the domino over by 20 mil and lining up the next crosshair. And then you get a longer contact area in that joint. And I personally don't think it's any weaker than a traditional mortise and tenon joint if it's cut well. As in, you've got the standard factory dominoes, so they actually fit in there really well, and they have the, you know, how dowels and biscuits swell up a bit, same sort of thing with dominoes. So I think it's just as strong. I don't necessarily like using it all the time, but for what I do, which is time is money, and the less time I spend on something, the more money it is in my pocket, I just can't live without it. Even with slot mortises and all of that, I'll still use.
You know, Jordan, you said, Robin, should I even bother with the joinery? I think you definitely need to go down that learning path. For one, just basic skill set, because it changes how you work anyway, but also to understand the limitations of the domino for a start. When you actually make your own mortise and tenon or sliding dovetail joint, whatever it is, you become very aware of suddenly, actually this domino, while it's working in its application, it's probably on the limit, and I should probably actually throw the domino back on the shelf and go to my chisels.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
there's definitely a learning curve there, I think.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It was just very eye-opening to see every joint be like that, and to think, you know, I probably don't have the kind of, I mean, what's it? I think a domino from Carbotech is 1,200 for the small one,
without all the cutters and biscuits.
Yeah, right. So why not just save up for 6 months and then just buy that, and then I can make anything I want.
Yeah, you could.
The thing about the domino, I found anyway, is once you have it, you start designing with it in mind.
Yeah.
Like you start limiting yourself on how you design something because the domino will speed it up. But then again, it also opens up things like tricky joinery. You can cut the joinery deeper than it has to be, and then cut a curve into that joint, and then, you know, use router templates, and it's easier to do it like that than it is to, say, do it by hand. So it opens up windows, but you find, at least for me, you design with it in mind, thinking this has to be a butt joint with a domino.
I think overall, I tend to kind of say, if this is a modern job, like a kitchen or like my table's a modern thing, I don't mind using modern tools. But if someone's ordering something that's classical in nature, I'll do it classically, as classically as I can. I just think, I don't know, I've never really thought about it, but just now thinking about it, it makes sense that that's kind of how I see it. I try and do it as honestly as possible, depending on the piece.
And I guess as well, there's so many curves going into that build. So the design is all those curves and how they come together. You don't now need some magic joinery, or, you know, whether it's shown or not. All the design, all the features are already there. The joinery just has to be done. Whereas, you know, a lot of the time the joinery is the wow feature, which you're not interested in this case.
Yeah, that's right.
So, John, what have you been on?
I have been doing a dining table, surprise, surprise, for a customer. It's a really geometrically challenging build, though. Like, I've been doing one cut, standing back, scratching my head for ages and figuring out how am I going to clamp this, how am I going to do the next thing, and which order to do it. And basically, what I thought would take me like 5 days to have in finish. Well, today's day 6, and it's still sitting out there, not in finish. But two days of that has been waiting for the client to actually find the time to pop in and have a chat. Because I'm waiting. He kind of originally wanted these inlays in the top, and I was never all that keen on the idea.
Right.
And then I sent him a photo, and I photoshopped in on the inlay, and he said, "Yeah, I'm not sure about that either. I might come in and have a look." So yeah, basically it's just waiting on the client to come in and say yes, so I can finally cut the top down to size and then start spraying. Other than that, what else? There was something else I've been working on, but I cannot for the life of me remember. Can't be that important. Yep. No. Go ahead, Rob.
That's it. Well, I finally, after probably about 2 months, finished that damn dining table.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so happy to just finally have it out the way and done. Should have the video coming out this weekend for it. I've got to the last bit of the edit, about to start the voiceover. Yeah, super happy that it's done. I'm kind of in the shop at the moment. I was in here today, and I didn't know what to do because I don't have the dining table to do. So I'm kind of lost. My day job has also actually just been very busy this week, so it's kind of worked out well. I've been having to focus on that. So besides the dining table, I actually haven't been in the shop very much.
Woohoo.
The only other thing that I've been doing is working outside on the cladding of the house. I got another section up, so I can sort of do. Takes me about 2 hours to do a 2.4 by 1200 area. So then every other day I go out there in the afternoon, just put in a couple hours and do a panel. So I'm hoping this weekend I'll be finished with that. So
Sweet.
yeah, it's been my week. So let's move on to the topic, and this is one that Joey was super keen to talk about. So it's
blame it on me.
It's no. Well, I mean, I think it's a very interesting topic, especially for people who either have a business in a wood shop or are thinking about going into it, because this could affect you. So it's about the importance of overhead allocation, and then the actual costs of a job and the actual profits of a job. So Joey, I'll let you go ahead and introduce it.
Oh, right. Well, okay. Let's see. So I guess that we should probably start off by saying that as most people who want to become self-employed would generally fall under the entrepreneur kind of banner, and generally entrepreneurs are pretty good at coming up with ideas and being creative and taking some risks, which is great. That's how we make things. But we're not that good at analytical thinking and kind of day-to-day business running. It's a completely different side of the business. And in my experience of what I hear, most people just kind of slack off in that area or just kind of wing it and kind of deal with the money side of things as they go, which is not the best idea, especially if you're trying to feed your family off what you're doing, or trying to get to that point anyway. So, so where do I start with this? So, when I was in business coaching quite a few years ago, one of the first things they ask you for is where's your list of your actual costs and figures for all your jobs, and then we can compare it in 6 months' time, and we can show you how much we're helping you to improve your business. And of course, everyone says, "Well, I don't have." What do you mean, actual cost spreadsheets? I mean, that makes sense to business-minded people, but not to people who are just more into the trade rather than the business, if you know what I mean. It's not
they're not accountants. They are
That's
doing
right.
a thing, which is their business. Yeah.
You're not there. Yeah, like you said. So the most important thing is to be able to track your actual costs. So to work out what a piece of furniture is worth, what are you going to charge the client? You need to work out what it's going to cost you first. And so I don't know, I'm probably going to ramble, so you guys just jump in and stop me whenever.
Well, I'm interested to hear how you break that up, because something like a bottle of, a simple example, something like a bottle of wood glue.
Yeah.
How do you make that a cost allocated to a job? I mean, that's just impossible.
Well, there's a good example. So while you may not be able to predict that you're going to need to buy that bottle of glue when you're doing the quote, that's perfectly normal. And you could allow, even if you want, you could say there could be an unforeseen costs that you might even add into your quote, like into 5% of unforeseen, who knows what I'm going to have to pay for. That's one way to cover that kind of thing, but also boosts the price up by 5%. The other way which is what I do, is I quote for the job, I work out the materials I need, and let's say I need to buy an extra bottle of glue. Say it cost me $20. That goes onto my spreadsheet for that job of actual costs. So I bought my timber, I bought some screws, and I bought some hinges for the job, and now I've got to add on a bottle of glue. So that just goes into my actual cost for that job. So it cost me an extra $20 than I thought it was going to.
Yeah.
That means I can still use that glue on the next job, so it doesn't matter. I don't have to.
Yeah, because that's where I was going with the example, is when you buy glue in bulk.
Yeah.
Now you've got to split it up for the jobs. How do you
Perfect example. So I buy 30 liters of glue at a time by a bucket.
Yeah.
And it cost me I think it was $230 for the bucket. Which if you work it out is half the cost of what you're buying at
I was just about to say, I buy $30 for a little, little squirty tube. Yeah.
So that's why you should buy it in bulk. But so that cost me for, say, one job, $230. I just take it on the chin. I lose $230 on that job, assuming it fits into that job's budget. Like the job's got to be worth at least $230.
So you're still seeing the glue as part of the job. You're not just seeing the glue as part of a functioning woodworking shop.
The way,
because Gary on, Jordan?
No, I'm interested to hear what you say, but I'll put a point after that.
Well, because in my mind, that needs to be bought and paid for and done. I don't want to have to keep thinking about actually having to pay that off for the next 30 jobs or whatever.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
I just want it allocated for, paid for, and then I can still allocate, say, a regular amount, say $10 for glue per job.
Yeah.
And that actually just becomes profit because I'm not buying glue.
So these costs aren't getting added onto your invoice, it's just onto your costs, right?
Onto the actual cost of the job.
Yeah. So it doesn't change anything, because what I was going to say is the way I operate with my jobs is I have a consumables fee that I add on to every kind of job. Saying it's a dining table, there'll be I'll add $30 onto it, and that will cover the glue that's used, any of the biscuits that are used in the top, the dominoes and the joinery. That covers that. But what you're saying, and now that you've said it doesn't go onto the invoice, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
That's not something I do. I'll lodge it. So say I've spent $250 on my 25-liter bucket of Typemon. I will lodge that as a business expense right away, but I don't put it onto the job file.
Right. So in that case then, just to get technical, do you then break down the cost? So you must have an average idea of how long that glue is going to last you, say 6 months, for example. Yeah. And then you must have to say, well, in 6 months, I'm probably going to get, say, I don't know, 20 jobs. I
divide it by the jobs.
Right. And so that's how you pay.
I divide it by what I expect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what it will last and what sort of jobs I expect. And sometimes it's obviously paid for faster, and sometimes I'm still paying for it by the time the next bottle of glue comes along, which is where it's not as efficient as your style of
I think
the job cost.
Both our styles have the same net result, and that the glue is paid for. Yeah, I just like the fact that it's being done. I don't have to think about it anymore. Once that job is paid for,
it's like a little loan. Yeah,
that's right. The next job is done. So where was I with my points?
Just before we move off that, does that not mean then that the customer who's paying for that glue is now taking one on the chin, and that's almost not fair on them because
it doesn't change the cost.
It doesn't change the cost of the job to the customer. It only changes the cost of the job to me. You think about the cost in a different way. Like, what does it cost me? That's different to what it costs the client.
Yeah, it affects your profit.
I've got a breakdown here. I can tell you. I've made an example, so let's make it more clear.
All right.
So let's say I have a job for $1,000. Going to make a thing. Total cost, including tax and everything, it's $1,000 to the client. I buy my materials, $400. and let's say that's what it actually cost me. Now, I may have quoted $500 of materials, so I just made $100. Score, good for me. That's just what it is. Now, the client's not going to pay more than $1,000, no matter what. So let's say I actually suddenly ran out of glue, and instead of paying $400 for materials, and I had to add on another $230. That just means I lose $230 from that job.
Right. So your profit margin just shrinks.
Yeah, that job pays for that whatever I need to buy, that bottle of glue.
Gotcha.
So in this same scenario, if I go back to $1,000 job minus $400 of materials, and then becomes the most important part is I take out my overhead costs, which for me is $25 an hour. I have to charge $25 for every hour that I work. And that includes 19 items. And so I can write a few of those things are accountant fees, bank fees, my van maintenance, diesel, road tolls, warrant of fitness for the car, website hosting and associated things, my PO box, my power, water, insurance, rubbish removal, my council rates and holiday pay, etc. for myself. So that all works out to $25 an hour.
So you've obviously worked it out and broken it up into an hourly rate.
Yeah.
I would
put it on a spreadsheet, work it out annually, work it out monthly, work it out weekly.
That's quite, substantially lower than what my overhead cost per hour is. But
Right.
Are you assuming that your hourly rate is based on you working X amount of days in that month?
It's based off a 40-hour week.
So you've broken it down by hours per week. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the biggest, and I'm kind of going all over the place with how I was thinking this conversation was going to go. So if I go back to my example, I'll carry on running through that. So I had $1,000 minus $400 materials minus $160 of overheads. And that's based on a random alley, whatever I've decided for this job. That gives me $440 left. I then have to take out tax and GST, just 30%. That sounds high, and it is. But what that does, is absolutely cover me for when the tax bill comes in and paying the government GST. And there's a little bit left over as a buffer. That's like a little business emergency buffer zone. And anything that's left over in that account is for, like what happened to me last month, where suddenly all the holiday bills came in and I had no work come in. And so I had to steal some money. And that's what that accounts for. So at the end of that $1,000 job, I get $308 in my pocket. Now that,
and you've paid your assistant?
Well, let's assume for this case that was part of the actual cost for the job.
Okay.
I didn't think about it for this example, but
I'm going to tell him.
So the way I work with the cash is that $308, which is my profit, stays in the business account and we draw weekly as drawings and put that money in our personal account. So we know how much money we need. Let's say, for example, I need to pay myself $500 a week for my own personal living costs. I only draw that much out. I don't take everything that I could take out. That just leaves my business account with some extra money in there. And it kind of is good for the bank. And then I just take out what I need from the business as every week as it goes along.
That's something I wouldn't mind. We don't need to necessarily talk about it today, but that aspect of the money in the business, keeping it there, pulling it out. I think that's an interesting one to go into. I didn't realize that it was a good idea to keep the money in the business account. I didn't even think that was a thing.
One, it's good for cash flow. And two, whatever, depending on your bank and how much money you have in there. The more money you have in a bank, the better interest you can get from it. Doesn't necessarily work with an everyday account, but it depends how your bank's set up and all that kind of guff.
Yeah, okay.
So by contrast, my system for calculating overheads is done at this stage anyway, and maybe you're converting me, but I do it by the day. So just like you, I have a spreadsheet with everything that I have reliably coming out of my bank. So whether it be my business loan or, my bills, so my phone bills, my internet, my power and all of that, including businesses, and included in that is my rent. And basically I break that down to the monthly cost all up. So for me, it's roughly $4,500 roughly. And then I will do a conversion of saying this month I will be working for 26 days, and I divide it by that. And then I know that on a project, if I'm calculating this project will take me 6 days, I will, charge 6 times, let's say $36 an hour, a day, I should say. And then that's my overheads cost. And then I look at price of materials, obviously, on top of that. And there's also a thing of some projects you can't charge as much as others. Like no one's going to charge. So a coffee table has the same amount of work as a dining table, but no one will pay the same price for a coffee table.
Yeah.
And so, we're certainly not going to charge the same for a dining table.
Exactly. So sometimes I might only be working on, $3 an hour.
Yeah.
In theory, because on the quote, I've quoted it quite low. But at least all of my costs are covered and everything that is out of my pocket. But I'm also, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate being my age and not having a mortgage. I think it's fortunate. But, I haven't got any really big expenses that aren't related to the business every month other than food. So,
yeah, that was something I was going to bring up, actually, is that I have the same issue. It appears, I think the way it appears is the bigger the job, the better the value, because the overhead cost gets spread out and can be consumed into the job much easier.
When you say the job, you mean into the profit, because there's a bigger profit margin.
Well, okay, for example, I'm just working on a kitchen job, and let's say I'll just make up a number. It's going to cost $9,000, for example. Built into that might be $1,500 worth of overheads. That is an acceptable cost for a kitchen. People tend to think $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for kitchens. So $9,000, yeah, sure, I can pay $9,000. But when you go and bring it down to a jewelry box, which has arguably more work than a kitchen, no one's going to pay $1,500 for that box, let alone $1,500 just in overheads. And so that is where the value and the perceived value, I think, comes into it, where is it worth your while as a maker? And I think that's when it comes down to, am I just in this to make money, or am I really in it to enjoy what I'm doing? I'll lose money on this job, and then I'll make my money on the kitchen job.
Yeah. For me, I mean, exactly right. I'm doing it a lot of the time for the enjoyment, and I don't think about the money. But as long as I can cover the actual costs that need covering on a job, and so a good example is a jewelry box, then I would maybe take it on. But what customers often, I get requests for, because I do the end grain chopping boards on my website, people often email me asking, I need a custom 500 by 600 mil chopping board. And I instantly email them back saying, look, I'm happy to quote for this, but the minimum price is going to be $550.
Yeah.
Because the reason these ones are cheap is I make 10 at a time, but when I make your one, I'm making one.
Yeah.
So instantly the cost of, overheads and cost of the job aren't spread out between 6 different or 10 different projects.
Right.
They're targeted on this one little one.
That's
And
exactly
out of interest, do people ever pay that?
I have had one person try and bring it down from $550 to $550 to $400. And that was the most they were willing to pay, and I still said no.
Jeez, because even $400 for a breadboard, well, a chopping board it's pretty rough, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of work that goes in, I don't think it's unreasonable.
Oh, no, but I'm saying in terms of perceived value.
But perceived value
yeah.
is, it seems like, Jesus, I could pay off a chunk of my car loan for that.
Yeah.
So
Instead, I'm going to put it on a piece of wood.
The same thing with those chairs I built a little while ago. One chair is going to be about $1,000 if you just order one. If you order 6, they're $300 each.
Yeah.
Cheers.
That's how it works when you're making lots of stuff at once. It's way cheaper.
It's spread out between each piece.
And that's how come people mass produce billions of things at once, because it's so cheap.
Yeah.
But that is not really the game we're in. And so the balance is finding customers who actually want to spend money on quality products.
That's where I'm stuck at the moment. Yeah.
And 2, just finding that price point where you can pay the bills and do what you love. It's interesting.
One thing I find difficult, and I don't know what your prices are like, but I find it difficult in approaching different markets, because if you are doing something for, let's say, $3,500, which is good, reasonable, but this upper class client was expecting it to be $10,000 just because it's what they can afford, then you might lose that job. So do you quote high and then bring it down for those sorts of clients, or do you just stick with what you think is good, which is going to cover your things, and you're still going to make a profit?
Yeah,
I struggle with that all the time.
So that has definitely happened to me. I got the job, but after explaining and actually almost giving a breakdown of the actual quote, so the client can actually see that the wood doesn't cost $5,000. Like the timber for your table is only going to cost you $1,800. It was like quarter sawn French oak or something. It's not that expensive. And so I ended up getting that job, but it was definitely a bit of a, how come it's so cheap? What are you going to use? I want to guarantee. That something I have been playing with is just gross profit on jobs. Like I might price a job and say, and I guess this comes to the market value approach of pricing. I'll price a job at, say, $1,000, and then I look around, and generally in stores and wherever, something similar might be $2,000. So I say, all right then, well, I've got to charge at least $2,000.
Yeah.
If that's what is market value. I could be a really nice guy and charge $1,000, and often I do. But I have been playing with this idea of, let's just charge what I think it's worth and see what the client says. And I'd say at the moment it's like a 50% hit rate of getting the jobs and being told it's way too expensive. So it's interesting. Yeah.
See, that market approach is market value. I do that on smaller projects. So let's say a whole table, like you can't really see it in this camera, but the one that's behind me, I will look at nicer furniture retail stores and see what a similar sized solid wood unit is selling for, because I could make that for less than $100 in materials because it's just stock that's on the shelf. But obviously if I'm only going to charge a day's labor and $100, people are going to start perceiving my quality as being cheap and a piece of crap. So I often will implement what a store's charging $700 for. Well, mine's handmade, it's handcrafted, I know it's better quality.
You can charge more.
I'm going to charge $100 more.
I'm
not going to be greedy, but I'm also not going to sell myself short.
And I think some people would get the impression that we're greedy bastards for doing that, and just saying, oh, you just made like $400 gross profit for nothing. But
the next project that comes along, we might only make it like $2 gross by the time all the little things pop up.
That's right. But that is why you can take on the jewelry box job. Yeah. Because you just got paid. And so then you can say to the client, fine, you want to pay for the Indian rosewood for your jewelry box. That's what it's going to cost. Well, you don't say it like that, but you'll say it's going to cost you $400. And that's what the timber costs. And you just got paid $400 extra from the last job. and that makes it worthwhile. But you can't really explain
afford to keep doing it for the next month as well.
Yeah, but you can't explain that to a client. As soon as you say that, like they're out. It's very difficult. Approach.
So Joey, you've talked about I think you had 19 points there, like that's your overheads. Is that very fluid, or is that set in stone now for the next foreseeable future? That's all it's like. Do you put a buffer into that, or is that exactly what it is?
Well, we know what the bills will be. So unless an insurance company puts up their premiums, we know that we're going to have to pay X amount for insurance.
But I mean, more from the perspective of, I think it would be very tempting to just say it's a rough amount, so I'm just going to put a rough amount in. So I know my electric bill is anywhere around this, so I'll just put this in. Is that a good way to do it, or would you rather be specific on the money?
I prefer to be specific, because then you can actually do some comparisons. And that's a little bit how we got into trouble last month, where I had been forgetting to do some paperwork allocating money for my petrol and some of the van running costs. And there was a couple of other things to do with my employee having to pay holiday pay and things like that. And suddenly money's coming out of the account way quicker than it was going in it for a little while. And we had, worked out what is going on. Okay, shit, we need to add a couple of extra dollars an hour here and here to cover ourselves. What we also did, okay, so I'll say two things here. The overhead costs, the money is always leaving the account. It's not like we're just building that overhead stash up. It builds up, and then 20th of the month, it goes down again. And then it builds up over the month and drops back down. So that's definitely a floating amount of money of overhead allocation. And we keep that in a spreadsheet, because all the money in the business account is just accumulated, and you need to keep track of it somehow. And my second point is gone. I was going to say something else. It's gone.
I hear you talk. I hear you saying, Joey, we all the time. Is this like, so do you and your wife?
My wife does. So I quote jobs. I do all the invoicing for jobs and dealing with the customer. My wife does the tax returns and deals with the accountant, and she knows the numbers much better. I need
to get me a wife.
She's actually just applying to go to uni to get a proper certificate in bookkeeping. So,
that's pretty cool.
Handy. Yeah. So, so I do as much as I can that I can, and then kind of pass off. That's why we have the spreadsheets where we can both access it, and we both are getting different information from the spreadsheet. So we're both using the same information.
So,
and Jordan, you do everything yourself?
Well, yes, I don't have anyone that can do it for me, but do I do it timely and reliably? That's the different. No, I'm still like probably 2-3 months of backlog sometimes in a lot of my bookkeeping, but of late, what I've started doing is with any receipt that's related to a job, and I haven't filed it yet, but it's like pinned up on a board, and it's after talking to Joey about the kind of job file, I will be doing that from now on. So at the end of every job, at least if I can keep that, the motivation to do it, I'll be able to lodge it, costings and all that sort of stuff.
Sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say, I do use QuickBooks, which is like on my phone, on my iPad, on my computer. Like it's always on me. So often if it's just yesterday I bought, the bulk pack of sandpaper. It was $100 and it was right there in the car. I took a photo of it and I just put that down as an expense. So, I mean, I try and keep that going. But yeah, I'm terrible, to be honest.
When I got, because I've only had this business registered for yeah, it's going on 12 months. No, probably just under maybe 11 months. So I obviously had to do my tax returns for the first time on this business in October. And when I got told how much tax I was paying, I was like, from this moment on, everything will be expensed, because I'm not going to get nailed on a profit margin that's not exactly what it should be every year. Because I think because this is a second job for me, I think
you have a high tax rate.
Yeah, I think my profit was around the $2,000 mark, and I had $800 in tax.
Yeah,
and that's just because
I actually haven't got an accountant yet.
Okay, well, that's tough.
Which is really hard, because at the end of the year, I'm trying to, because apparently QuickBooks will do it all for you, and it's easy to go through it. But the actual system. So last year, as in last financial year, I almost had a bill of like $5,000. Because I entered the info wrong, and then I went back. I was like, "Oh, crap! Okay, so that's where you put your actual expense." And then it came back to be like, I actually think I got some money back. Not much. It was like $50, but still.
Yes, at the risk of giving financial advice, which I will say I'm not giving financial advice, having a business that has running at a loss or very high expenses officially is pretty good on the old tax.
Yeah. My problem last year was I went away on my touring show, and every time I go away, it's like 10, 11 grand.
Right.
But I have to invoice them, and instead of going through the hard way of figuring out how to have 2 different ABNs and all that crap, I just did it through the business invoicing system, and that was a mistake.
Yeah, right.
Never doing that again.
I was going to say...
Sorry, you go, Joe. You go, Joe.
So I was going to say before on the job file, it's a very... I think it's a really good idea. I keep all the job files. So I keep anything to do with a specific job in its own file, which seems to make sense. I imagine most people do that. I keep all my completed accepted jobs. I've got all the files from every job I've ever done. So if that client comes back to me, I can just open the file. Often I don't remember them if it's quite a while ago.
Yeah.
I can look at the drawings of what I made them, and I can go, oh, right, I remember this job. This was an awesome client, or, oh my God, I don't want to work for these people again. I'll be too busy. Yeah. So for a start, that's a really good way just to have a reminder of what it is that you did for them. But I also keep, and maybe more importantly, I keep a list of all the jobs I don't get. And I've got every job that I have not won since I started doing this. And I've got the file for that. I've got all the drawings and everything for them. And it's pretty important, certainly in the world of business coaching, they really stress that you measure some way how many jobs you're winning versus how many you're losing compared to how many quotes you're doing. So you're winning 100% of the work that comes in. If you say that, because most people will say, and I was one of them, oh yeah, I think I get, I'd say like, 90% of the work that I quote. And they're like, oh my God, what are you doing at the seminar? Go home then. You should be raking in the money.
Yeah.
And then you go, how many jobs do I get? And then when you actually start tracking that, how much time do you spend quoting work that you don't get?
What counts as a job that you don't get? So someone sends an email,
you
and
quote
is that
it,
where?
You quote it and you don't get the job.
So even if the person is ultimately super flaky in the beginning, as soon as that quote goes out, that's when you say the job's on the line.
Yeah, if I have sent an actual price to someone, that job goes into the yay or nay file.
Right.
And if it's just tire kicking, emailing, it just is what it is. So the whole business coaching approach is that you need to be able to measure it, how much time you're putting into those failed quotes. What is it about those quotes that is that you're not getting the jobs? 9 times out of 10, I find it's just a client not willing to pay for the thing. But there are other things around that. So it's something to think about, and it's probably you could consider having to add, say, an extra overhead cost for the lost time of quoting if you're quoting let's say you're quoting 50 jobs a week and you get one, which is probably pretty good going, one job a week coming in, pretty good going. You just spent 49, well, maybe 49 hours.
Yeah.
An hour quoting a job. Who's paying for that? There's a whole week. So you need to think about that. Obviously that's an extreme case. But do you want to add some extra overhead rate to pay for you to do that costing out? I mean, I don't personally, but it's something that I'm sure should be thought about by someone.
Yeah. So you guys were both talking about accountants earlier. So Joey, you've got an accountant?
Yep.
Jordan,
Absolutely.
you don't?
No. I wish I did.
Well, that was going to be my question. Joey, could you do this without an accountant? Or not a chance?
I guess we could, but there's a lot of thinking to doing tax returns and stuff. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into it, and you have to be kind of with it. Often by the time we get around to doing a tax return, it's like middle of the night. Me and Holly can sit down together and actually do the thing, and no one's in the mind for doing maths. So we use Xero, the online accounting software. So all our invoicing goes through Xero. Our accountant can just log on, download all the information they need, put it into the report, push send, and it goes off to the government, and we pay them.
When you say accountant, do you mean like you've got Dave, he's your man, you call him up and say, Dave, I need some, maybe that's more of a financial advisor, but like when I do my personal tax return at the end of the year, I go to a company and say, here's everything, off you go. Is that your interpretation?
That's what we have. We have an accountant, except we don't have to take anything physically because it's all digital. And so I think I've only been there once to actually see them. They just send us a bill after they do everything.
So do you have a bookkeeper as well, or is it?
No, that's what Holly is doing.
So she's essentially acting like the bookkeeper.
So she's doing as much of the bookkeeping as she needs to be able to get daily work done. So she spends probably 2 or 3 hours every Saturday or Sunday. One of those days she'll go through the books and do catching up on dealing with receipts and making sure the bank monies add up to what we've spent. What did they call it? Reconciling the accounts.
Yeah. So that's where my massive downfall with my bookkeeping is that I never reconciled my accounts for the first 2 years. So I don't know what I started with. I don't know what I kind of should have and all of that sort of stuff. So my worry about going to a bookkeeper is having to face this embarrassment.
Right. Okay.
Can you clean this up for me?
This is what I kind of wanted to talk about this because, and I think I had the impression that you kind of work that way, and a lot of people do, I think. And so when I was saying about keeping track of your costs, if I'm not talking about you guys specifically, just the proverbial you, if you don't keep track of your costs, how much your job cost you, how do you know how much to pay yourself when you get the final bill?
Yeah.
I don't. I mean,
the room went very quiet for a second.
Because I know that if I've paid everything off for that month, then anything that's left should, in theory. But
okay.
That's
like the Henry Ford style of paying bills.
Yeah. So I mean, everything is direct debited.
Right.
And out of my business account, and then at the end of most months, I won't say every month, I won't lie to our loyal listeners here, but I will check my bank statement, make sure that everything's gone through. I'll compare it with my expenses spreadsheet, and then I know that I have X amount of dollars left in my account.
Quite a long process.
But I'm used to the monthly pay cycle.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So
fair enough. Yeah. I guess I work on a weekly. Ideally, I should have something leaving the workshop every week, and I should have some money coming in every week. And that's not necessarily going to happen on the dot every time. Yeah. And there'll be variations. but the idea is to have something coming in and something going out every week, whatever that may be.
Yeah. See, ideally, and I think my revenue as of now isn't quite high enough to be too worried. Like, I'm not hitting that 75K a year turnover, so I haven't got the worries of GST and all of that to worry about just yet.
Huh.
So
you got a higher threshold than us.
Yeah, our threshold's 75,000, and
like
last year I
20?
almost hit it.
Okay.
Wow, 20 is low.
Yeah.
Last year I almost hit it, but with that job that there was a job that would have tipped me over, but it turned out to not actually cost as much. So I was still safe. And this year I was really considering just registering early, doing it, and I'm kind of glad I didn't.
Okay, so there's a whole different question then. So are you, do you, at the moment, you're not charging GST, or do you have goods and services tax?
We have GST, but I don't have to charge it because I'm not registered.
Okay.
So everything that I quote is
Just that's the amount.
That's the amount, yeah.
So do clients ever ask you, one, do clients ever ask you for receipts, GST receipts? And two, do they say, hey, does this include GST?
I've only had is it corporate, commercial? That's the word I was looking for. Commercial clients ask about GST. Can you please send me through an invoice with GST? And I just say, look, I'm not registered for GST, so I actually can't. And I've never had it come back and bite me in the butt. They've always just said, okay, no worries. But the benefit of registering for GST is that every time I buy something, I can claim that GST against the GST I would be charging.
So that actually, I would say you should do that anyway, because I think it probably will make a difference.
Yeah.
Just being able to claim that.
Perhaps after, like Cuffy's saying, treat the bookkeeper like the dentist. Just do it better later than never. I reckon I might get that in order so I can really start tracking everything properly, and then register for GST. 'Cause it could just complicate things further.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yes, you're right. It could actually.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to have to cut this one off. I think we're going to have to redo this topic again. Clearly, this conversation is not over. But yeah, let's quickly get to some questions and then talk about who we're watching. So Leroy, a couple of weeks ago, sent me a few questions, so I wanted to slowly get through those. This is a second question. So Jordan, or actually, no, I'll put this to Joey first because I think Joey's going to have a good answer for this. Who would be a master craftsman you would either like to work with or learn from? I know you know a lot of designers.
Well, I'm going to assume that's anybody living or dead. I think I'd have to say maybe my granddad, because that's what he was. He was a master furniture maker. Yeah, I think probably that's my first choice. And after that, if I had to go for someone everyone might know, maybe Sam Malouf.
I was going to say Malouf too.
Yeah. It seems like a fun guy.
Yeah. Now, I don't know very many woodworkers or designers or craftsmen. Like, I know you guys sometimes throw out these names that I've never heard of. Is that like super important to progress your career, or is it just something that you learn over time through experience who these people are and their designs?
Yeah, I just learn as and when things crop up, and I'm like, that was made by that guy. And that kind of put two and two together over time. I don't think it influences me either way.
Yeah.
I mean, like, do you go out and buy the monthly woodworking magazine and go through all the designers? Oh, I love what that guy's doing.
No.
Is it like that?
The only time that, it's a little bit off topic, but like if I run into a furniture maker that I really love his work, or just his approach to everything, I will find that is more valuable to me than reading about everything, because you get to kind of ask questions, hang out with someone that you kind of look up to in some regards, and then you leave that feeling inspired and like I'm doing the right choice. But I never look at something that's in a print magazine or online and think, wow, I'm inspired. It's not until I meet the people. So I think it's important to socialize more than it is to idolize.
Okay.
For me.
Got another one here from Ross at Clash Furniture Makers. That is Ross, hey, Joey?
Yep, that's Ross.
Yeah. Do you guys take a deposit for your jobs? I think we've talked about this before. Jordan, you do, don't you?
Yeah, so I used to take 35% on some, like on smaller jobs, and then 50 for the bigger ones, but now it's just 50% straight up.
Yep, 50%, because generally material costs and just cost of things is generally half the cost.
Yeah.
So at least I can pay my bills and my suppliers don't get pissed off if the client decides to run. So
yeah, I have to cover materials in the first day or two of labor. Generally, it's just one day that I cover in the deposit. But
so you guys wouldn't take out of your profit for that material.
No.
Right. Okay.
If they fail, then
it's a trust thing. If the client's not willing to pay me money, why should I be willing to do the work for them for a start? There's got to be some give on both sides. So client has to pay me money, then I can buy their materials, and that's generally what I tell them. And then they get, once I drop it off, they get generally a 7-day invoice to do the final payment. I will say that on big jobs, generally anything over kind of, I'd say $6,000-7,000 worth, I would possibly ask for a progress payment, because that job's going to take longer than 2 weeks, almost certainly.
right.
I'm going to need some cash coming in that time. So I will take some photos at that point, send them through the client, say, here's the next third, and the last payment generally will only be a few $100s. So I just about get fully paid before the product's finished.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you can't use that material. I think because we talked about this, it was either last week or the week before. That wood, if you buy the wood and then they bail, that wood's no good to you. I mean, it may be in the future, but it's...
Yeah. Or I might have to try and spend time finishing that piece and selling it, or who knows, taking it apart, or it could be, who knows. So,
yeah.
And then the last question, this is from Rob. I think I've butchered your surname already once before, Rob, so we'll just leave it at Rob for today. Do you vary rates? This is quite interesting. Do you vary rates depending on how busy you are, i.e. your time is in demand? And do you raise your rates over time as you gain reputation? Joey, that first part's really interesting. Like, so
yeah,
I'm just too...
I definitely don't. I don't see, like, I need to make the money I need to make. Just because I'm in demand doesn't mean I should make more money. And if anything, to me, that is going to lower my demand pretty quickly. I think if you put it on a graph, you would probably be able to see some spikes. I just book people up in a queue, and I would much rather have 3 months booked up. Well, that's about the limit, because then people start saying, I don't want to wait that long, and they'll just go to the competitor. But having at least a month and a half kind of booked up, that's a really nice place to be. And you just keep the client informed. Yeah, okay, your job's one more step closer. I just finished this next job. I'm now going to think about buying the materials for your job. So things are happening.
Domino's app when pizza's on its way.
That's right. Yeah, just keep in contact with them, and they really appreciate it.
Yeah. I do charge more for rush jobs. So if they come in and they're like, I need this done for Tuesday, and then I'll say, look, I can, but I have to put this one on hold. So logically, I have to charge more. I mean, I don't have to, but if I don't, then why would I take this job over that job?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't like the idea of someone being able to buy their way to the front.
It's not,
isn't
in my mind,
isn't it
it's
just
not
business?
buying himself to the front, but it's saying that if you have to move your machine setups, you might be waiting for something to dry and you're not able to do any work anyway. Then, you're going to charge a premium for that. So,
do you not think, though, that, Jordan, really you are justifying you're justifying it after the fact? The bottom line is that we're businessmen, and if we can make more money because of demand, we should be doing that. And I don't see there's anything wrong with that. If you are the world's top designer, you're not charging the same rate. So if you're in demand because someone wants it today, I don't know. Personally, I think more power to you. I don't think that's greedy. I think that's just business.
I agree. Yeah, totally. I think
if you don't agree, but that's cool. I think that's good.
I think if you can pay, if you can charge a price in which you're happy with, your client's happy with, and no one leaves feeling ripped off, then it's justified.
I think you can create the same kind of demand by saying, my clients have been waiting for a month, and you can't just come in and jump in front. You'll need to go and wait at the back of the line, and that's what the demand is getting the chance to get to the front of the line, and you just got to wait your turn.
When you're saying that, yes, I agree. I should be a little bit more clear about what I mean by a rush job. So I agree. If someone comes in and they're wanting a bed built, and I've got another person lined up and I'm working on another project, it will be a flat out no, not until X date. Okay. What I'm referring to more is if someone comes in and they're looking for me to machine some timber for them, and I'm in the middle of a build, but I can squeeze it in. It's not going to be any more than a day's work.
Yeah, I get you.
That's what I'm referring to by charging a premium.
I guess I've done that. I've just said, I have done that. Someone's come in, can you dress this piece of wood up? Yeah, sure. It takes me 5 minutes, but I'm in the middle of something else. There'll be $25.
Yeah. See, I have a flat rate now because I had heaps of people just coming in. I would say heaps, like 2 or 3 a week, coming in for simple things. And now I say, look, flat rate is $92 if it's just a small job. That will cover machine setup and the first hour, and then every hour thereof is like $30, $34. And most people are happy with that. Some people have said, I can do it myself, so why don't you?
Yeah.
Go. I don't want to sand your stupid panel. You can,
All right, cool.
All right, so who are we watching? I'm going to start this week. There's a guy by the name of John Peters. He's an artist as well as a woodworker. I think he's got a tradie or contract background. And this week, we've been talking about chairs for the last couple of weeks. He recently made an interesting chair out of a single sheet of plywood. It was an interesting design. I don't know if I necessarily love it, but just the way he put it together was simple but functional, and it didn't look too bad. And it was just out of a sheet of plywood, and I watched the video and I was interested, and it just caught me because we've been talking the last couple of weeks about chairs, and here's a guy who's taken a sheet of plywood, boom, 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 and he's made it. So the idea of chairs being difficult, they don't necessarily have to be. So
he didn't use the whole sheet up, did he?
I'm not sure.
Seems like a lot of timber.
They were pretty big chairs, but so it's John Peters. He's been on YouTube for ages. It's a chair from plywood. I'll have the link below. Joey?
Cool. I was doing some research on CLT cross-laminated timber, and so there's not one specific video, but there's a whole bunch of really bad videos, and you can kind of glean information out of these things. So it's this product that's mainly taking off in Europe and America, where they're making massive plywood, really. They're using what looks like 150 by 50s and laying up massive sheets of plywood, and they're building like 10-story buildings out of this stuff. And because when I built my round tabletop earlier this week, I was thinking about doing it cross-laminated because I had the 20mm stock. And I was thinking maybe I should just make like a big piece of 2-ply plywood.
Yeah, stable as anything.
I was really close to doing it. And then I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen. I could just waste all this timber. It could just explode. And then I couldn't figure out a way to glue it up with the tools I have. It was going to have to be glued up in one go. And there's no way I could have done it by myself.
Yeah.
And then I thought maybe it needed 3 layers to be more stable. It needed then just 2 layers. It may have been too unstable. And I said, bugger it, I'll do my normal. But yeah.
Hey, on that, the question that just popped to mind is when you laminated the top pieces too thick, did you have the crown of the grain? Did you look at that and think that, I'll make this one go up, this one go down, so it's laminated?
Opposing.
Smiley face.
No, because I was looking at the best faces.
So yeah, okay. Because I've never made a tabletop with laminating like that.
Yeah, I usually do that. I do actually usually pay attention to that with the thicker boards, so it's over and under.
Yeah.
So the board's going to stay flatter. I figured because I was making such a big laminate that it didn't really matter.
Right.
Which means I probably could have just gotten away with doing a cross lam when you think about it like that, because it's just going to be stable as all hell. But I just kept second guessing myself.
That's healthy.
Joey, why did you say you needed to do the glue up all in one go? Couldn't you have just glued up the one?
Yeah, and turned it 90 degrees, but then how would I glue up the middle of that? I mean, I could have put some beams across. I can make some cambered beams and glue that up, but it was just such a massive surface area. There's no way I was going to guarantee a nice laminate join around the perimeter. I didn't feel.
Yeah, no, that's true. So what I did is I've actually got some clips for cross lamination.
Okay.
In the description, there were videos that I thought were pretty decent. It's really interesting stuff. It seemed and the reason I asked about the clamping is because it looks like when they clamp up the sheets, you can't just they glue them all together in sort of one go. So it's everything
rams both ways.
And so they're clamping from the sides, down, everywhere. Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
Vacuum bag it. That would be one way, right? Sure.
I think there'd be enough. There wouldn't be enough power in the vacuum, would there?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. If the joinery was sweet, it'd be all right.
Yeah.
If you weren't forcing the timber, it'd be all right.
Because these guys, as Joey says, they're using 15 meter by 3 meter.
Like presses.
400 mil thick, they said, the one video.
It's massive stuff. It's huge pieces of timber.
It's the German style, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the right timber, made out of like spruce and stuff.
Yeah, spruce, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I am thinking of the right stuff. I didn't look at anything yet.
One of the videos in the description below is a house here in Australia. This was back in 2015 or 16. Right. First house in Australia to be built with this stuff.
Yeah, cool.
I think I saw that, yeah.
Who was I? Stephen
Zhang.
No, it's pronounced a J, I'm pretty sure. Stephen Zhang. He's a Aussie guy, fairly small channel, but he does some cool stuff. I think I don't know why I keep finding people that make their own machines. I think I've watched one video, so YouTube keeps suggesting more. But I watched a sliding table, made his own sliding table video series, even though I'd never make one. But
he must only be he's still at school, right?
He's still in high school, so it would be 15 to 17 max.
He's done some pretty good, some well thought out stuff, especially on some of the steel machining. I thought I was pretty impressed with how his thought pattern was going.
I'm kind of I thought I should find out whereabouts he's based, because if he's Perth based, it'd be cool to get in touch and have a hang. But then I thought it could be a little bit weird for me to reach out to a schoolboy. and ask him to come to my factory.
Oh my
In
God.
some dodgy industrial area.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
Didn't even think of
come
that.
after 6 p.m. because before then I'm too busy. Yeah, like it sounds really dodgy.
What a world we live in, man.
Yeah.
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 Anyway, probably didn't need to say that.
Mm.
All right, everybody, we're going to have to bring this to an end. Thanks very much for watching. All the links to what we've been watching will be in the description down below. This podcast will be available on YouTube, iTunes, or SoundCloud. My name is Robin Lewis from robinlewismakes.com. We were joined by Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks and Jordan Crawford from Periodic Furniture Studio. I got it right this time, Jordan. Yeah.
That's the one.
So thanks everyone for listening. Hope you all have a very good weekend, and we'll see you again same time next week.
See you.